I'm a byproduct of the first generation of kids with computers and internet connections and video games. And so I was an avid user of all of these things in my youth. And when the first video games became networked, what emerged were persistent worlds, or what were known as massively multiplayer games. You may have heard of World of Warcraft or Second Life or many of the others, and those really would have been the first metaverses. We didn't call them that at the time. And I was one of the first people to begin making markets in these sort of persistent worlds. It began with a game called Sanctum. It was an online game made by a company called Digital Addiction. And it was kind of like chess meets Magic the Gathering. You bought virtual packets of cards. You assembled with those collectible cards a deck, and then you would play a game on a board. And because the game was persistent and the objects were alienable, you could transfer them from one player to another or trade with another player. And therefore, there was a secondary market that emerged. Having been a player of Magic the Gathering, I recognized, just like in the analog world, the digital world wouldn't behave any differently. I contacted the game company and said, I'd like to buy your virtual packets of cards in bulk, and I'd like to run the secondary market, much in the way a comic book store or a baseball card shop would. And this was back in 1998, 1999. And so I identified that just because something was intangible didn't make it less valuable. And then when the first games, Meridian 59, Ultima Online, and EverQuest emerged, I went into the first metaverses and I became the largest market maker in the world of the digital currencies or virtual currencies in these games. I eventually had hundreds of thousands of people around the world, but mostly in China, that would work in these metaverses or massively multiplayer games to earn digital currency that I would then make a market in. I was PayPal's largest merchant for years. I was instrumental in the launching of Alipay and became very familiar with cross-border payments and the value of digital objects. We were doing over $1 billion a year in January 2006. I closed a financing with Goldman Sachs Principal Strategies, which was the proprietary trading desk of Goldman. They took a look at what I was doing and said, you're basically managing currencies for thousands of virtual nations and effectively the market maker between all of these virtual countries. We've never seen anything like this, and it's in some ways more complex than the economic system of the analog world. We need to invest. I was the first private investment they had ever made because it looked like something important may emerge from this. So for me, this all predates the birth of Bitcoin.